HMP Wandsworth hit the headlines last year when an inmate escaped. But as this programme has since reported, the prison is plagued with problems, including rampant drug use, overcrowding, violence, self-harm, and of course suicide. Now it's become the sixth prison in a year and a half to be issued with an urgent notification for improvement after inspectors found serious security failings, squalid conditions, and prisoners in despair. Its governor resigned this week. Well, our social affairs editor, Jackie Long, joins me now in the studio. Jackie.
Well, I suppose there was a grim inevitability about moving towards this urgent notification. We've been following this story for months. Of course, the filth stands out in the mind. This was a place at times running rife with rats and mice, also a place with frightening levels of violence, a prison unable to provide at times the basics. People told us they were having to steal pants and socks in there because of a lack of decent clothing. Now, what we did discover operating very successfully was a very organised drugs economy. All of this essentially confirmed today by this urgent notification. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means the Chief Inspector alerts the Secretary of State to urgent concerns. Well, to be fair, you would only need to be alerted to the state of Wandsworth Prison if you've been asleep or you've not been listening. So the big question now is what can the prison service and the government do? In the past, if there was an urgent notification like this on a prison like Wandsworth, which is hugely overcrowded, one of the ways of easing the pressure is to move 200, 300 prisoners elsewhere. The problem is right now there is nowhere else to move these prisoners to. So this is all part of a much wider problem across the prison estate, which will get bigger and bigger as we head towards the election. But the story today told through the gates of Wandsworth Prison.
I think Wandsworth, like all of the prison system, operates behind a cloak of secrecy. What goes on inside prisons is kept hidden.
It is a world by definition lived behind closed doors. But the crisis boiling over inside Wandsworth for so long is spilling out into the open. A failing, filthy, unsafe prison not working on almost any level. Essentially now put into special measures. David Shipley served time at Wandsworth for fraud.
Wandsworth is one of the worst prisons in a failing prison system. It's a place that's full of filth, violence, drugs, and human misery. It often, in my view, hurts and kills people through neglect as well. It's a dreadful, dreadful stain on our society.
Concerns about conditions at Wandsworth stretch back a number of years, but there was a renewed and unflattering spotlight on the South West London jail after a high-profile and embarrassing alleged escape last September. Since then, there's been growing anger among families, former prisoners and people living in and around the jail about conditions there.
I'm ashamed for me. I'm ashamed for all of you.
More than 200 people attended this public meeting just 3 weeks ago, demanding changes.
It's time to change. It's time to get the places to how they should be, because it's not fit for purpose.
Then, earlier this week, the governor resigned. The urgent notification goes straight to the Secretary of State for Justice, Alex Chalk, and it is utterly devastating. The Chief Inspector describes Wandsworth as a prison of deaths, drugs and despair. Since the last inspection in 2021, violence has continued to rise. More than 2/3 of prisoners surveyed felt unsafe. 10 prisoners had taken their own lives, 7 in the past year. Most prisoners were unemployed and spent over 22 hours a day locked up. And there was poor leadership at every level, from the prison service and the Ministry of Justice.
So devastating, but perhaps not surprising.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard many concerns coming out from Wandsworth.
Although this is the 6th urgent notification the Chief Inspector has issued in around a year and a half, even he was shocked by what he found at Wandsworth.
Well, this was an enormously depressing report. I've never been into a jail in my 3.5 years as Chief Inspector and found prisoners who are so despondent, in such despair. Drugs are rife within the jail. We smelt cannabis wherever we went when we walked around the wings. And almost more worrying than anything is the fact that despite the very high-profile escape that happened at the end of last year, some of the security procedures at Wandsworth aren't good enough. For example, officers are unable to account for how many prisoners are on the wing or off the wing during the working day, and that's absolutely astonishing.
This evening, the Prison Minister, Edward Arger, said in a statement it was a deeply concerning report and that on top of additional support we've already provided since September to improve safety and security, including nearly £1 million worth of upgrades, we need to go further still. There will be a strengthened management team, he said, and extra experienced staff to help turn Wandsworth around.
The report is shocking.
For those who've been raising concerns for years as independent monitors going into Wandsworth daily, can they be convinced the authorities are now listening?
Could this have been avoided, getting to this stage?
If they had been responded to in a more constructive and immediate way, I can't say that everything that's being reported in this inspection would not have happened, but inevitably there would have been significant changes.
The Secretary of State has 28 days to respond. Meanwhile, we understand families of prisoners are looking at potential legal action against the government to test whether sending people to prisons with conditions like Wandsworth could be unlawful.